Hey guys, Connor here from Kamerastore.com, joined again by Nico from Camera Rescue, bringing you another top 10 video for 2022 using Google data from 2021. So today we have the top 10 rangefinders, so all cameras that use a split image or two windows to triangulate distance. Yeah, let's just get right into it. First up is number one on the list, the Mamiya 7. So a 6x7 interchangeable lens rangefinder, electronically controlled, with some of the best lenses out there, one of the best finders out there, easy intuitive controls, auto exposure if you want it, small size, that's sort of the definitive feature I think, is just how small it is. Now lightweight, just a really nice package that is super popular.
And desirable. I think the reason it's on the number one, it's like desire. People want to search for it, know about it, even if it's out of the price league, they want to lust over it. So the Mamiya 7 is that camera that a lot of people want. I think now like medium format is the format that a lot of people enjoy shooting because it really makes a big difference to most digital shots you can take. 35 has a similar aspect ratio, but that 6.7 is very nice, and the Mamiya 7 is portable rangefinder. I mean, you said it, like we're not doing any SLRs, but like all the rangefinders are usually quite lightweight, and in the 6.7, lightweight rangefinders, the Mamiya is probably the nicest of them all.
Yeah, if you want 6x7, a rangefinder, and lightweight, there are no other options.
And light meter.
Yeah, and a light meter, built-in meter.
Well, there's interchangeable, yeah, because you have the Fuji GF, but then not interchangeable. So yeah, I guess it wins for that. Yeah. And it's Mamiya, which nowadays is a very searched name. And after that, who's the next?
The next one is the Leica M6. So a bit of a poster child Leica. It's got the red dot on it there. Interchangeable lens, obviously, Leica M mount. Fully mechanical, but has a light meter built in. You can see the little dot there, that's the metering circle. Just an iconic camera, and one that gets searched all the time because
it's the most popular. Like we've seen it every day in and out. It's the most popular M body. It has a light meter, which makes it one of the not so many Leica bodies, because you have the MP with a light meter, but it's way more expensive nowadays. And still made new, which is good. Then you have the MA, but doesn't have a light meter.
The M7?
The M7, but it has aperture priority, and it's electronic. Yeah, it has a couple of mechanical shutters, but you're basically pretty much lost in the wind with that one. But yeah, I think the M6 does fill the market for M and a light meter. If you don't want a light meter, then the M4 is basically the same camera. To say maybe not the same internally, but pretty much the same as for use. Has the easy loading, has the easy rewinding, has all the things people really want when they want to shoot Leica, and maybe one convenience, because we'll talk about it later, but there are some not so convenient cameras from Leica that are very nice too.
Yeah, I think that it suits the modern shooting style by having a built-in light meter. And obviously there are external meters that are widely available and quite nice these days, but having it built into the camera is it saves you a step.
And don't forget that in the Leica world, saying Leica on the front of the camera with a red dot actually is points in favor for a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, there's people for everything, but they like their brand and they like the red dot. Yeah.
Leica as a cultural icon and as a style and accessory world that's part of why you buy a Leica, is to be part of the Leica culture. Number 3, we have a somewhat of a surprising entry here, is the Olympus XA. So this is an absolutely minuscule camera compared to the previous two. Still full frame 35mm, just like the M6, but this is the pride of Olympus's design team, being able to fit a 35mm f2.8 lens into a camera that you can fit in your back pocket. It is basically the size of a bar of soap. I've had bars of soap bigger than this. Yep,
me too. Currently have one. But yeah, like the fact that this is a full frame 35mm rangefinder with ISO selection, with rangefinder focusing, with
exposure compensation,
a
backlight compensation,
backlight, has battery. It's such a great camera. I don't know what happened inside Olympus that they decided to discontinue this and go with the XA2, 3, 4, which didn't have rangefinder. I guess it was too expensive to produce. Maybe like on the M3 when they were like, wait, these viewfinders are too expensive. Let's do the M2 and move away from higher end cameras. But yeah, the XA is pocketable rangefinder. I mean, you don't hear those two words come together a lot. Yes, you can't change the lens, but you know, it's really nice. The diaphragm or the aperture is like 2 blades, so it does like this weird square that you would imagine would give horrible results, but actually is a great lens.
It's quite nice.
And
the only negative of the lens was that it's because they had to use so much glass and think so creatively to fit a 2.8 lens in such a small space. It has quite a bit of light fall off in the edges, so you get some vignetting, especially at the open apertures. But you know, that's, some people think it's nice.
I get that on the Contax G2, and it's a way more expensive camera and more modern. So
I think that's also another reason why they wanted to simplify it with the XA2 and XA3. So those models have f3.5 lenses, whereas this one has the 2.8 with the extra stop of light. But if you can find one that's working, and yeah, it's just a great camera. You can bring it everywhere with you. You got this tiny little focal throw, so that's the focus right here.
And the flash.
Yeah, and the flash. You have an attachable flash here, which doesn't make the camera too much bigger. But yeah, you can take it off, put it in your back pocket.
Yeah, it's really nice.
And it stays safe with the clamshell design. A great camera overall.
Keep that lens safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, the smallest and probably most pocketable of them all.
Mm-hmm. So next, we have the Yashica Electro 35. We don't have one in store right now because you guys bought them all. We have instead a Yashica Lynx as a stand-in because they're of similar size. This basically just has fully manual exposure and a faster lens than the Electro 35. But the Electro 35 is a aperture priority 35mm rangefinder with fully manual rangefinder style focusing and a 40mm f1.7 lens. Really well built cameras. The only issue with them is battery compatibility. The battery that they take is not made anymore, so you have to use an adapter. But those adapters are available, and you can put modern batteries in them. So,
yeah, and I think the idea of like a fixed lens with a 41.7 rangefinder that is not, you know, going to kill the bank, because you're shooting rangefinders, you know that a 1.4 lens usually is going to break the bank, especially if you go to the high end like Leica. But like the Electro is a good camera. They're plentiful. They have a 1.7, a 40mm, which is like not too long, not too short, and they also have a cool aesthetic to it. And I think overall it's not a bad choice. I mean, I'm not surprised to see a Yashica Electro in the top 10, but it's a camera I haven't used much, but I think it does have a very big following for sure.
Yeah, I think this and other fixed lens rangefinders offer a great alternative to people who are scared off by prices of Leicas and other interchangeable lens options, especially because especially if you're only going to shoot one lens. So if you're going to get a Summicron 50 and that's the only lens you'll get, you're very well served by a camera like this or a Canonette or some other fixed lens rangefinder that, you know, if you're not swapping lenses, you don't need interchangeable lenses.
Even one thing that I've seen a lot recommended, I recommend myself, is like if you want to go into rangefinders and you're like, oh, I've seen this photographer, they use a Leica or they use a Mamiya, they use an XPan, whatever camera that's high end, and you're like, I really want to buy it. Like, rangefinder focusing and style of shooting is so different that I feel like one shouldn't jump into that game so fast because it's a hefty price point to start. So to get your feet wet and see if rangefinder's for you or not, like you said, the Canonette, the Yashica Electro 35s are good cameras to get, use, be like, okay, there's no way, I'm a left eye dominant guy and I can't focus because my nose is against the body, or I don't like it because I like seeing the depth of field, or things like that. Like, it will let you know if it is for you or it is not for you, and then maybe you can go into the high end knowing. starting off with a Leica or a Mamiya 7 is not exactly the best choice. Of course, you're going to get your money back if you sell it, but it's, you know, it's a high ticket to choose to see if like, oh wait, I'm going from a Canon A1 to a Mamiya 7. Maybe start with an Electro Canonette similar.
It's a serious investment to decide that you don't like rangefinders.
Yeah.
So yeah, something to try out, or something if you only plan on using one focal length, you know.
Good choice.
Yeah. So next we have quite an interesting camera. Not a surprise to see it on the list, but I know a lot of people who wouldn't call this a rangefinder. I disagree, but I know a lot of people who wouldn't.
We have internal fights here at work, and it's like, oh, is it a rangefinder? Is it not?
Well, we should introduce it first.
Yes.
This is the Contax G2.
Yes.
It is, to describe it myself, a hybrid rangefinder. So this is an autofocus camera that uses a rangefinder style system that shoots 2 IR beams that then triangulate the distance based on some complex engineering that I don't understand. But it is a rangefinder style system.
The camera doesn't understand it either because sometimes it misses focus. So it's one camera that I've owned that it is, I think, like a hybrid rangefinder. You don't pick your focus point. You have manual settings, kind of like a Contax T2, but they're like steps of like, okay, from 1 meter to 3 meters or one. It's a little bit more complicated to shoot. It does miss focus quite a bit if you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
Once you get, it's like you really have to warm up to this camera. Yeah. It does use interchangeable like lenses, which are AF, like Connor said. They have multiple lenses from wide angles with a 16mm all the way to a 90mm. And the 45 f2 is said to be as or more sharp than Summicrons. People even convert them to like an M mount. Yeah. But it's its own mount, so it's the Contax G mount. You have the G1, which was the first camera, and then the G2. But yeah, it's a very light camera for a lot of fashion photographers, lifestyle photographers that kind of like, you know, something that's automatic but not fully automatic. So you have some control over exposure and shutter speed and aperture and so on. So it is a really nice camera, but they are, you know, a little, you know, you gotta get used to them. Plus, I really dislike, if you flip it sideways, this really hits your chest while you walk if you have it on a strap. And that's extremely
viewfinder bulge
yes,
here.
it like comes out quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of uncomfortable, but it is a great camera, and it's grown in demand a lot.
This bulge, I mean, this viewfinder is one of the best designed viewfinders out there. This and the G1 will crop and move the viewfinder to compensate for parallax as well. If you put a different lens, it crops into that lens. If you focus more closely, it moves the frame to compensate for parallax.
If you find the viewfinder when you're trying to shoot, because
yes,
instead of being on the corner, it's like in the middle. So if you're used to an M mount, you're suddenly, instead of looking here, you've got to move the camera sideways. So it, like I said, takes a little bit practice to get used to it, but it is a very popular, and Contax, like we know, Contax T2, T3, Contax 6, 4, 5, they're very premium cameras, very looked for. Their 35 SLRs not so much, because they were kind of like a little bit high-end and over-engineered in a way, but these Gs are very nice.
Yeah, and the G2 made some significant improvements, especially in autofocus, compared to the G1. The G2 added a second autofocus system that allowed it to get a little bit more precise. People complained about the quality of the G1 focus, and people complain about the quality of the G2 focus as well. So it's not a sports camera. Yeah. It's meant to be used a bit slowly.
Yeah, and one thing you have an advantage with the focusing is when it's wrong, it's very wrong. So if you're used to it, you hear the motor in the lens kind of like go way beyond where you're trying to shoot and way closer, and you're like, yeah, that's wrong. And you have a little scale inside the viewfinder that tells you where it's focusing. So it's not impossible. It's just, like I said, not a run and gun like you mentioned. It's more like a take your time. Hey, I'm taking a picture. And you take a picture. You can't be like hyperfocus and like hyperfocal and shooting fast and so on.
Yeah. Well, you can if you pop it in manual focus. It's got a little.
Which is super not intuitive.
Next on the list is another Mamiya here. So you may be thinking, this is the same camera as this, but this is the Mamiya 6, not 7. So there are a number of key differences. The biggest being that this extends. This is the a 6x6 collapsing rangefinder, still with interchangeable lenses, although not as many. But a big advantage here is that, yeah, you can collapse it in and it's even smaller than it already was, which is hard to believe because it was already really small.
Yeah.
Super lightweight, a great finder as well. No auto exposure in this model.
Yeah, but it has a light meter. It has that Mamiya glass that's super sharp. It has it uses batteries, so it is not mechanical, but it is really like if you want a 6x6 rangefinder that is semi-modern or modern to the end of film camera standards, because it is not new in any way. It really works, and it's a great companion for traveling if you like that 6x6. If you like by 6x7, then you should maybe go to the 7 or two other models that might fit. But yeah, this is a really nice camera. The selection, like you said, 3 lenses, make it easy to not be, flustered when choosing what to take out. Like the 50 is a brilliant lens, 75 is really nice, and the 150 is if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But it's usually very affordable to the 150, so if you can pick it.
Yeah. And play around. It's a portrait length lens, so you have 3 options: a wide normal-ish, normal, and then that sort of portrait, sort of telephoto.
Do get it calibrated if you go for the longer lenses on rangefinders, any model, whatever you're talking about. If you're using a long lens, due to the rangefinder focusing, you're not seeing the spot, so basically the triangle of focus will work worse and needs very precise calibration for it to work well. So long lenses, always make sure that they're properly calibrated to your camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we start with a classic.
And we're going quite a bit back in time here for number 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. Number 8 is the Leica M3. So this is the very first Leica M body, released in 1953. It basically turned the entire rangefinder world on its head with a huge, for the time, combined rangefinder and viewfinder. Leica had never done that before, so that was a big step forward. And this finder has different frame lines and just a robust feel, and yeah, this basically made every other rangefinder on the market outdated the day it came out.
Yeah, and still today, Leica keeps the same, conversation, design language with all their cameras. They've just introduced the M10 a few years ago that had this same size, and the whole pride was like, hey, we made a digital camera that fits into the same size as a film camera. The M3 started. The M was a new M bayonet, which was coming from the LTM, the Leica thread mount M39. And this M mount would select frame lines on their own. That's the 3, stands for 3 focal frame lines you could see. This model was 50, 90, 135. Then they just kind of moved a little bit apart. People wanted wider lenses, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, the M3 still stands today as the first and probably the best for the hardcore Leica aficionado. It is the one that started it all. Has a slower rewind and loading, but it is really well made. And also for longer lenses, it has the longest rangefinder distance. I think it's 0.91 magnification. So if you're using any of those Noctiluxes or things like that, this is going to give you more precise focusing and accuracy than the other later Leicas. So
yeah, and framing as well. Just this viewfinder, maybe more than a lot of the later Leicas, is designed for that 50 millimeter focal length.
Yeah.
That fills the frame, and so if
big chunky lines.
Yeah. If that's what they are chunky. If you're using mostly 50, this is a great finder for you. If you're using wider lenses, you'll need external viewfinders, but.
Yeah. But really nice. One thing to note is they're usually always 1 meter minimum focus distance. A lot of the modern glasses 0.7, even less nowadays with the digital counterparts. Yeah. So if you are one that likes shooting close, like 0.7, this won't do it. They can be modified, but do it at somewhere that they'll know what they're doing.
Yes.
Don't get someone bending your Leica.
Or do it at home. Please don't do it at home.
Yes. Don't. No. That always. No. Never. But yes, it can be done. It can be changed. There are also the double stroke, single stroke. So it's up to what you want. And you can geek out about the serials and the days and the years and so on. But it's an amazing camera.
Yeah, it's such a good design that they're still making cameras that look just like this today.
Yep. And we go to the next one, which is the infamous.
Yeah, the Hasselblad XPan. So a truly unique camera in any list. This is a natively panoramic wide-angle rangefinder camera made by Fujifilm and Hasselblad together. It has a set of interchangeable lenses as well, but really the defining thing for this is that panoramic format. And I'm going to open up the back here to show that you're just, it's not cropping the top like a point and shoot would to do panoramic. It is natively wider than 35, and there are basically no other cameras that do this. And that's why this is so special.
You have the wide looks, the rotating lens cameras that shoot around a similar width, but a 24x65 negative is a new thing. It literally uses medium format glass. The 45 f4 is basically a 6x7 lens that shoots onto 35mm film. So the XPan's become an extremely wanted camera because nothing in the market has ever done something like this again. There's been always rumors of new digital cameras trying to do this, and they even have I think Fuji GFX has an XPan mode. So like nothing really does this in the camera world, and this camera just is great. It can change from full frame 24x36 or 35, yeah 36 to 24 to by 65. So you can change, and the camera knows where it is and adjust the roll, so you won't get different spacing, which is amazing. You can see there how Connor's changing that. So everything in this camera is amazing. Everything in this camera is unique, but that also makes it, you know, very looked for, and basically the camera to get if you want to shoot panoramics. Yeah. They do last quite a little while. There's the XPan 1 and the 2. The 2 is nowadays very, very expensive. But yeah, like you said, there's 3 lenses and they're all extremely good. Nothing to not like about the XPan except for the price if you're trying to buy one.
Yes, and it's a very common thing that gets tossed around is finding the best XPan alternative. And you mentioned swing lens cameras, which don't quite do the same thing and have some issues of their own because they're taking, you know, they're taking a long time to go across, and that they get some perspective change from the lens moving like that. And it really doesn't accomplish the same thing. And really, at the end of the day, the only comparable camera to the XPan is the Fuji TX1,
yeah,
which is the same camera. So it's at a truly unique position.
Or cropping 6x7 film.
Yes, but then you lose this form factor.
Yeah.
Unless you have a Mamiya 7, but you're still losing this form factor.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really, really been the camera that people have been not finding alternatives. There's Kickstarters that have been trying to make this. I know that Oscar Olsson made the Panomicron, that basically was a camera that was trying to emulate this with a Bronica 50mm that was shooting panoramic. So there are people trying to find things, but I think if there ever is a new XPan format camera that is somewhat useful to the everyday shooter, it'll be for sure a top seller.
Yeah, I think the uniqueness of this format is why you see those new products and like 3D printed cameras basically are mostly panorama cameras.
Yeah.
Because that is such a unique form factor that just isn't served by anything but the XPan.
And it matches the 6x17 form factor. So if you are a medium format pano crazy guy and you are like, I want something on my neck I can shoot that format with, this will do it. And the quality is superb. It uses Hasselblad Fuji glass, which is sharp as hell. So yeah, you won't regret if you pick one of these up. And it's no surprise it's number 9 on the list. Like, it's just, everybody wants it, everybody's searching for it, everybody's surprised by it when they find out the first time. That's the cool thing about film cameras. There's like a film camera for every single need. It's not like one does everything. It's like, oh, you want pano? XPan. Yeah.
I still remember the first time I opened one of the backs and saw that ultra wide focal plane shutter, and I was just like, oh, it's a real panorama camera.
Yeah. And we have
The final
one.
camera on the list is
My favorite.
Yeah, I think a great choice for the Leica crowd. It is the Leica M2, so the second M camera to come out, just a few years after the M3. Addressed some, not issues that they had with the M3, but maybe tailored for a different market. It's a little bit cheaper. That was sort of, I think, their goal at the time. But it also serves people who shoot 35mm lenses.
Without glasses.
Yeah, without glasses, yes. They don't need goggles like the M3's 35mm lenses. This viewfinder is natively 35mm focal length. So if you're shooting a little bit wider or perhaps switching between the two, this might suit you a little bit better.
But yeah, they lost some things on the M2. The automatic frame counter reset is lost in the M2. The rangefinder distance is not 0.91 anymore. They went to a cheaper rangefinder system, which after, what, 60 years is still just as good in my opinion, if not better. Maybe not
hard
better,
to tell the difference
just
looking
as
at them
good.
next to each other.
Yes, and I think the M2 really tailored, like you said, for those people wanting wider angle lenses. So this shows 35, 50, and 90 frame lines. Also very clean, always unique frame lines, not like the convoluted viewfinders on the M6s and others. So it is a very clean camera to shoot if you are 35, 50, or 90. Yeah. They are usually cheaper than the M6s and M3s out there, even though they're picking up because people are noticing that they're that good. But yeah, it's my favorite. It's the one I shoot pretty much every week. And the last one I'll ever get rid of if I have to get rid of them. I think it's the best. And like we said, it doesn't say Leica on the front, but everybody knows you're carrying one if that is your thing.
Yeah, those who know will know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the viewfinder really is excellent. And the frame lines, I will say, you mentioned how chunky they are on the M3. These are much thinner and much sharper as well. Rounded.
They're slimmer. They're like more. I'm sorry, but like I know a lot of M3 users. Yeah, the M3 looks like a kid drew it with a marker. This one's like an architect drew it on like a blueprint. Like it's much nicer, but still the M3 has its reasons. But to me, the M2, I'm very happy to see it on the list, even as the last one. But yeah, very, very nice camera to shoot, and I think a lot of people know about it, and nowadays, you know, they're looked for. Great start for the M system, and even finish if that's something for you. Yeah. No hot shoe, which is a sad thing about the M3, M2s. Like they have no hot shoes.
Sync ports on the back here.
Yeah, which are not PC sync, so you need that little adapter.
Yeah, you need a special thing.
Slightly annoying. It can be lost.
It's all proprietary.
Yeah, but it's a very nice camera. Yeah. And I think, you know, when you get into the M system, if you do, you kind of got to choose like the light meter, yes or no. Then you got to choose frame lines, and that kind of like immediately divides into one or two models tops. And 35. No light meter, the M2 is your camera.
So that's number 10 on our list of the top 10 rangefinders of 2022 based on search results, ads, and Google information from 2021. I've been Connor from Kamerastore.com, joined again by Nico from Camera Rescue. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment below if your favorite rangefinder didn't make the list, or if you agree with the list that's gathered from data from you guys. So yeah, but otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.